I have a story to share, which
I want to preface it, if you don't mind.
Yes.
This is very interesting for one very big reason. It's when the frequencies don't seem to work. Why don't they work? Because they always work, but in this case, they don't work. So this story is quite telling, and it's very interesting and also important for you to remember. So just, Anna, tell us the first part of the story.
Okay. Well, I've been working with the frequencies for, well, since they came out, and they're a great blessing. And I know they always work. So I get curious when they don't. Basically, a couple of weeks ago, I was going through a phase of kind of personal work. Quite often these days, I have discomfort and pain in my body, which is old vibrations moving out, and I'm used to that. I'm used to working with it. But I was puzzled about the nature of these vibrations because it seemed to be fear, and it didn't seem to have a context. It certainly wasn't anything to do with present times. So my assumption was, well, it's probably old stuff. Don't need to know necessarily what it is, but it was coming and going, and it was like I would hold the frequencies, and then it would kind of ebb and flow. And this went on for some days, and I thought, well, it's just a clearing out, so be it. But then often my body likes to do this when I get into bed, when I'm supposed to be resting. So Mark had just come back from a really intense workshop. I'd had 2 or 3 days of doing some intense personal work, get into bed, and I can feel this stuck energy in my body, which is quite painful, and it feels very contractive, like fear. So I'm just paying attention to it, and suddenly I found myself in the middle of a full-blown panic attack, and that's not something I'm accustomed to experiencing. So it was uncomfortable, but I was also curious. So I grabbed the panic to calm. Nothing happened. So then I got the green SRTLF in my left hand. Nothing happened. Held them both together with the Divine Mother, and I'm still in the midst of this panic attack. I reversed them, no different. So at this point, I thought, hang on a minute. I don't think this is me. I mean, I'm experiencing it, I'm present to it. Have I picked up something that isn't mine? And normally I'm pretty good with boundaries, and I checked in and thought, it doesn't feel like that. But then what came to me suddenly is that I needed to get our friend Sean, who's a very intuitive, beautiful healer, to check out the house. And it came out of nowhere, and I thought, I think there's a presence in the house that I'm picking up. So I shared that with Mark, who he'd actually decamped to the guest room because it was all getting too much for him. He came back and he said, well, yeah, maybe we could get Sean to check that out. And I said, no, actually, there's a quicker way to do it. So I wrote a note and said, to the presence that I'm guessing is inhabiting the space of our house, and the fear, the panic, and the distress that I got, it was a she, that she is experiencing and wanting to be witnessed and released. And then I put the SRTLFs and the Divine Mother on that note. And in 30 seconds, my panic attack had gone. So that to me was very clear proof that it was somebody else, this other being, who was actually had the issue and not me, but it was somehow being embodied through me. So that was really intriguing. And I have to credit Thrity for this because of a story she shared years ago about a friend of hers who got incredibly ill and only became well when she put the frequencies on a deceased friend who I think he'd been interacting with, and it was the friend's issue and not his. I've done some ancestral work of my own like that. So that was wonderful. And as Lotta says, you know, you're continually learning with this system. So my sense was that we needed to help this being move on into the light. but we were both really exhausted, weren't we, from where we're at?
It was knackering. It really was.
So basically, we dialogued using a pendulum, yes and no, and just made it known that we acknowledged her presence, checked out some information, established it was a female and an adult, that we got a sense she had inhabited this place, or at least this space, whether it was this building prior, and that she was indeed struggling with emotions of fear and distress and pain. And I think you picked up that there was grief.
Can I just add, she was the mother of another spirit presence that we helped move on, a young boy who passed away here.
But at that point, we weren't sure what was what, but we both said, we're really tired. We wish to help you, but it can't be right now because we're not in a good place. But we promise that as soon as we are, we will reconnect, which we did a week later. And we did, in fact, I checked in with Meher and we had a chat. I checked in with our friend Sean, who was able to tune in and said, yeah, you've got a female presence in your house. There's something about a loss of a child or of a baby. So we came together and just made a kind of simple ceremony. And I had left the frequencies on this note, but I asked prior to us starting the ceremony if we could be given a name so that we could address her by name. And the name that came was Cecily. I'm not sure whether that is her name or a name she was willing to be known by, but she said she was willing to be known by that. So we wrote Cecily on a piece of paper and put the SRTLFs and the Divine Mother on. We had a bit of an interaction with her, and then we were able to establish she was indeed the mother of the little boy that we helped move on very shortly after we arrived here, and suggested that she may wish to move on now that he'd gone. She did want to, but she was kind of stuck. So we ended up just in the moment. Mark got moved to do some drumming, and I had suddenly a very clear image of her, and I visualized the SRTLFs in her hands and the Divine Mother picture on her chest, and invited her to walk into the light, which she did very swiftly. And it was completely obvious the moment that she'd gone, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was incredibly powerful. There was no doubt that energetically something changed, and she wasn't present with us anymore. Very, very special, very strong.
And for me, it was a great relief, because a lot of the body pain that had been really giving me a lot of discomfort over the last few days had been very intense. It just went. And I was back to just one of two of little glitches that I know are mine. And I felt tired, but that sense of feeling something is clear, you know, when you've finished a really hard job and it's done. And since then, yeah, my body's felt a lot more stable and a lot easier. So that's also a blessing. So that for me is it's a pointer that there are other levels that need to be checked sometimes. It's not just, is it mine, yes or no? Is it something I've picked up? Is it somebody else who's trying to have their needs addressed through me? And as I said, when Thrity and I spoke, I said, I'm pretty good at working one-to-one with clients face-to-face, and I have some experience working at a distance. I'm just not that experienced yet at working with people who are not in bodies, but it's probably not that different. It's just building up that kind of, it's a learning curve, but it's a blessing.
And also, what Anna just said about it being a learning curve is really right. It's an incredibly steep learning curve, because this is new for both of us. It's actually 2 years today that we've moved from London here, so it's a bit of an anniversary, and those 2 years have been full on from day one. And one of the questions that we asked this entity was, will others come seeking help and assistance from us? And it was a definite yes. So this is gonna roll. There's no doubt about it. It's going to roll. So yeah, it's an incredibly steep learning curve. So the frequencies are wonderful tools to have to help us do this sort of work, because it's quite incredible. It's not what we were looking for, but it's found us. So it's amazing.
And I remember 30 years ago, very early on, after you launched the RTLFs, you describing them as tools of grace. And that's exactly what they are, in every respect, but particularly when being able to offer them to beings who are trapped somewhere where they need to be somewhere else. And it's so easy, and it's such a blessing to be able to offer that.
It is so beautiful because, and what you said, it's very quick. It's very quick when you get to that point of offering that soul, the frequencies and the Divine Mother and the heart connection, and just guiding them to the light. It's literally, it's so fast, isn't it? And as you both said, the shift is so palpable. It's like, yep, it's happened. And yeah, they really are fantastic to use in this way. And I know, Anna, you've used them in situations where a person is making the transition into physical death. Yeah. And that's another really lovely way to use them. It's like just putting them on the person's name as a blessing, along with a Divine Mother photograph, can be a wonderful way to just offer that love and support and that blessing to that soul as they make that really important transition. So well, yeah,
I was very blessed because I was able to be with both my parents as they transitioned. Both of them left their bodies holding the RTLFs with the Divine Mother on their chests. And both of them, when it actually came to letting go, was incredibly peaceful. Incredibly peaceful.
Thank you.